No, you can.
I'm just gonna see what else. I'm gonna
This clip too.
Sorry, I'm so sorry.
I think that's the scaffold person over there.
It takes a little, makes some noise, lines, ignores most of it.
I'm at the very end, so that's why I'm reminding you. Right now I feel good. But she has to get there.
Hi, where are you? Yeah. The person you'll introduce their name. Yeah, that was my second. I try to match. Yeah, I got to feel that energy. That's it. Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you all so much for being here on this historic day. St. Louis and I rise. We rise today as one of the 187 Black representatives to ever serve in an institution where over 1,700 members of Congress who enslaved Black people have held office. In front of a building built by our ancestors who were enslaved, to offer the Reparations Now resolution, declaring that the United States has a moral and legal obligation to provide reparations for the enslavement of Africans and its lasting harm on the lives of millions of Black people. St. Louis and I rise, not alone. With arms interlocked and hearts full of gratitude to the broad coalition of advocacy organizations, some of whom you will hear from today, whose partnership with my office for over 2 years has culminated in the introduction of a resolution that cuts deep like the pain of slavery and its manifestation in our lives. We rise with gratitude for those members of the 118th Congress, my colleagues, who are joining us as original co-sponsors of this historic legislation, including none other than Congresswoman Barbara Lee, Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, Congressman Jamal Bowman, and more, as well as with special thanks to Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, who is lead sponsor of H.R. 40, the Commission to Study and Develop Reparations Proposals for African Americans Act, whose partnership I appreciate, and who called me this morning to offer her blessings for this resolution and to express her support. She would be here today, she said, but she has a prior engagement. Thank you all so much for being here, and also thank you to Councilman Kenyon McDuffie for your leadership and for joining us here today. St. Louis and I rise because Black people in our country cannot wait any longer for our government to begin addressing each and every one of the extraordinary bits of harm, all of the harm it has caused since the founding, that it continues to perpetuate each and every day all across our communities, all across this country. Let us speak this truth. Uncomfortable as it may be, our country was not founded on the principle that all people are created equal. It was founded at the expense of the lives, freedom, and well-being of black people, African folks who they stole, whose enslavement, exploitation, and dehumanization were written into the Constitution. The truth is uncomfortable, yes, but slavery and discrimination are not a minor or insignificant part of our country's development. They are integral to it. Consider this. The U.S. economy was founded on the production of crops planted. We're talking about tobacco and rice and sugar, cotton, harvested and produced by enslaved people, enslaved black people. By 1831, the United States was delivering nearly half of the world's raw cotton crop as a result of chattel slavery. In 1861 alone, the value placed on cotton produced by enslaved black people was $250 million, or more than $8 billion today. All of this happened not in spite of the federal government, but because of it. Yeah. Because of the U.S. federal government. 10 of the first 12 presidents of this nation enslaved black people.
All right, yeah.
President James K. Polk traded enslaved black folk, enslaved Africans at the White House. We're told through the Oval Office. There have been 1,500 more enslavers of black people than black people who have served as members of Congress. As my staff said earlier today, every single black person that serves in the United States Congress is a miracle. The Supreme Court's Dred Scott case.
Come on with it.
That decision that was heard in St. Louis, in my district, holding that black people could not be U.S. citizens. Folks that they brought here, that they exploited, that they stole, kidnapped. We're trying to find one kidnapped person. We changed all the media focuses on this one kidnapped person, usually white. The U.S. stole 12 million people. But the Supreme Court's Dred Scott decision holding that black people could not be U.S. citizens was decided by a majority that included 5 slaveholding justices. This is not just a matter of our country's history, but it is a matter for which America must provide reparations if we desire a prosperous future for all. We know that we continue to live under slavery's vestiges. We know how slavery has perpetuated Jim Crow. We know how slavery's impacts live on today, from the black-white wealth gap, to voter suppression, to segregation and redlining, to disparities in infant mortality rates and other health outcomes. When the black-white wealth gap is $14 trillion, it's unjust, and it wouldn't happen in a just and fair and equitable society. Let me just add. So those are not the natural consequences of human society. None of that. They are directly caused by our federal government's role in the enslavement and exploitation of Africans, of black people, throughout our history. Our federal government never saw fit on its own to rectify the immeasurable, the cataclysmic harms of slavery. But we're here now, and we're lifting up this mirror of a resolution so that America can face it and see, look in it and see our future. A future of healing, a future of repair.
Yes.
a future of accountability.
Yes.
We're not here to request that future. We're here to demand it.
Yes.
That's right.
We need that future now. Reparations now.
Reparations now.
That's why we're introducing this resolution today. We need reparations now, and of course, this initiative, it does not exist in a vacuum, but it exists to complement and it exists to enhance long-standing efforts like HR 40, led by the late Congressman John Conyers, and today by Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, whose leadership in Congress has been vital. Barbara Lee, like the Congresswoman Barbara Lee's, her resolution urging the establishment of a Commission on Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation.
That's right.
We all, everyone out here, and all those we are connected to, our networks, our coalitions, our organizations, we stand on the shoulders of giants and continue this work, as reparations are deeply personal to all of us as they are to me. It's deeply personal to me because when I think of my ancestors, and my ancestors lived their lives in West Africa, unaware of the horrors that would befall them. But the thing about that is their last names were not Bush. Even though mine is. That name was forced upon my paternal ancestors by the white people who enslaved them. And I can feel that in my bones every day. So this is about my own family's history too. As I fight for y'all, as I fight for our legacy, I'm fighting for my family. But I also know that because I have this privilege, even after all that my ancestors experienced, I have this privilege of representing the people of Missouri's 1st District as the first Black woman to ever represent Missouri in federal office. I will do everything in my power to hold our government accountable for the moral and material crimes it has committed and continues to perpetuate. I'm grateful, you all, to this movement, to the advocates, to the activists who have engaged in this struggle every single day at the state and local levels, who are making incredible progress, like in St. Louis. To the people who carried the torch before us, to those who gave their lives, and to those who are willing to open their eyes today, regardless of how closed they were yesterday. Join us. We want you to open your eyes and see that none of us are free until all of us are free.
Period.
Thank you for being here, and now I will turn it over to none other than the Congresswoman Barbara Lee.
Well, first, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
This is truly an historic day, and I want to thank our sister, leader, woman warrior, Congresswoman Cori Bush, for bringing us here today, for her hard work and for her commitment to repairing the damage of this country in terms of what we are doing today with reparations now, the movement that you all have brought forward to make sure that we start this new chapter of our movement, focusing on fighting for reparations now. And just to Congresswoman Bush, you know that she's a brilliant but a passionate fighter for racial justice and equity, and a champion for the people of St. Louis. Thank you, St. Louis. And still we rise too. Bringing us together and for her efforts to introduce this resolution. And to all of you who are here today, we couldn't be here without you. This takes a movement. This takes the power of the people's voices to be heard, to push this Congress forward, to do the right thing. We just came from a very constructive strategy session, and we talked a little bit about why this moment is important. And I just have to say a couple of things. First of all, I stand here now thinking about my great-grandmother, Fannie Wilson, who was born during slavery in Galveston, Texas. I'm thinking about, and I do this several times a year, going to the west coast of Africa, going into the dungeons where our ancestors were held, chained, looking at that door of no return, thinking about all those who did not make it to America, thinking of all those who died in those dungeons. There's no way that we can allow this movement not to go forward, because it's on their behalf that we've got to make this country live up to its creed of liberty and justice for all. And when I say for all, I mean for all. For all. This more perfect union will be more perfect once reparations have been instituted, implemented, and developed for African Americans.
Yes.
Also, let me just highlight what we're facing today, which Cori Bush, our great representative, mentioned, but I want to add a couple in terms of the impacts of the legacy of slavery. Health disparities laid bare by COVID-19, economic inequality, the wealth gap, the disproportionate rates of poverty, the disproportionate rates of black people being incarcerated, environmental racism. All of this can be traced back to hundreds of years of systemic government-sanctioned racism.
Yes.
Emanating from enslaving African people for over 250 years, then moving forward with Jim Crow, segregation, lynching, you name it. And here we are today. And so that history shows us that reparations really can't just be an idea, but they are a moral imperative. Reparations have the potential to address long-standing disparities, racial disparities, economic disparities, again, making liberty and justice for all, truly for all. This resolution, it couldn't come at a more important time. As my home state, and I'm very proud of my home state of California. I spoke before the Reparations Task Force at their final meeting a couple of weeks ago.
Yes.
And we're beginning to make progress for the work that's being done by our Reparations Task Force. And I'm proud of California for leading the way, but I want our country. I want our country to follow suit. It's far past time for the federal government to catch up and to make sure that Congress understands that it must move forward. And yes, thanks to the leadership of Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, who has followed in the footsteps of our late beloved Congressman John Conyers and shepherded H.R. 40, we're closer today than we ever have been before.
Yes, indeed.
Closer today. I worked, many of you may know that I did work for Ron Dellums, a great warrior for justice, who was one of the second after Congressman Conyers supported H.R. 40. This is way back in the day.
Yeah.
And when I came to Congress, one of the first bills that I co-sponsored was H.R. 40. And so this is not new for me. This is not new for any of us here. After the murder of Mr. George Floyd in 2020, we all witnessed a national moment of reckoning, racial injustice, and began organizing. Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee successfully advanced H.R. 40 through the Judiciary Committee last Congress. Through the Judiciary Committee. I sat there almost all night for that. And so we know that this can be done.
That's right.
We know it can be done. And now we began our efforts to build a commission on truth, racial healing, and transformation. And of course, our Truth Commission, the transformation aspect of it is reparations.
Yes.
It's not about reconciliation because there's nothing to reconcile. It's about transformation. It's about dismantling these systems of oppression and these systems of discrimination and repairing the damage. So I just want to thank you for moving us forward in this next chapter. Reverend Representative. And thank you to all of our St. Louis advocates, partners, and warriors for justice. Thank you all again so much, because we are going to see liberty and justice for all, and I mean for all, in our lifetime.
In our lifetime.
In our lifetime, okay, because we're going to have reparations now.
Reparations now.
Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib from the great state of Michigan. Yeah, another woman warrior who's been on this case for decades.
Thank you so much to the Congresswoman Barbara Lee, and thank you so much for my wonderful sister of service. Detroit rises with St. Louis today. I can tell you I am proud to have been born and raised in the most beautiful blackest city in the country, the city of Detroit, where reparations wasn't a radical idea. We've been talking about it for 4 decades. With the leadership of Congressman John Conyers, who is really connected to the movement. This is a person that was marching in the streets about reparations before he even was elected to Congress. So Detroiters, we all know that this is a debt that our nation owes, and it's true acknowledgement of the pain and harm inflicted on generations of our black families. Reparations is necessary towards really true equity. We hear the Biden administration and so many others talk about that word equity. They need to make sure that reparations is part of the movement towards equitable distribution of resources, and making sure we acknowledge again the fact that we have racial injustices and structures right now that are systematically racist in our country. This is an opportunity for Congress to confront our nation's racist history of slavery and white supremacy that continues to really grow and fester within all corners of our country. We must provide our descendants of enslaved black families with reparations that they were promised, and they deserve to create pathways towards healing and justice. And I know our colleagues don't like talking about this, but let's just be honest. There has been reparations in our country.
Yes, yes.
There has. It wasn't an ugly word, or people didn't
No,
talk
right.
about it when it was
Just
other
for
communities.
us.
But when it came to my black neighbors, oh no, silence. The path towards justice has never been easy, but we must remember it's never in vain. Congress must act to confront these uncomfortable truths and right the wrongs of our history. For centuries, black Americans have endured brutality of slavery, the violence of white supremacy, the dehumanization of Jim Crow, the systematic racism that I continue to see in Michigan, where we lost more black home ownership in Michigan than any other state in the country. Because of systematic racism. By providing reparations, we can begin to address racial wealth gap that our sister Cori Bush talked about, and decades of disinvestment in our communities of color, and dismantle racist systems that have held back our black neighbors for far too long. We know that true healing cannot occur without acknowledging pain, and reparations is necessary, but I want to be very clear. Quote from Lauren Hood. She's a dear friend and the chair of Detroit's Reparations Task Force. And she says, for it to be a holistic reparations, it needs to be acknowledgement of the harm, some form of redress, and insurance that it won't even happen again.
That's right.
So I'm proud to join again my sister in service, Congresswoman Cori Bush, in introducing this very important legislation. And I'm incredibly inspired every single day by her leadership and courage to bring this up. And I gotta tell you, it's like no economic justice without reparations. No economic justice without reparations. And again, I think when we talk about economic justice policies in Congress and throughout our country, reparations need to be on the agenda. And I thank you so much. And with that, I've been watching Congressman Jamal Bowman these last, he's on his, amazing member. But I was watching him watch us sisters speaking. And the Bronx is coming out of you. I can see it. You are in for a treat of a person that speaks truth to power in a way that, gives me goosebumps sometimes. He's our principal. He may have left the school as a principal, but he is our principal. He's out on the floor constantly telling us what to do. But he is an incredible ally and supporter. And again, his courageous leadership in supporting this. With that, Jamal Bowman from New York.
Yes.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Representative Bush, for your love of our community, for your love of this country, and for your love of the world, and for your visionary leadership. I remember when we first got into office, and we were on CNN together. Oh, gosh. And I believe we pushed the anchor to talk about reparations. That's not even what they wanted to talk about. And we just started pushing them on this issue. It was literally like our first interview together. And so, I'm going to be very brief because I think much of what needs to be said has already been said, but I'll just add a few additional points. I want to quote Brother Muhammad. Have you forgotten that once we were brought here, we were robbed of our name, robbed of our language. We lost our religion, our culture, our God. And many of us, by the way we act, we even lost our mind.
That's right.
So that to me captures why reparations is so essential today and why reparations has been so essential throughout American history. I have just discovered the tribe that my family came from. I just discovered because I did my own research. I'm still learning the language. I'm still learning the culture. Imagine growing up in a society where you are completely disconnected from your homeland. That is what African Americans have been dealing with since we have been brought here. And I watch with pride and support when I see the Irish fight for Ireland and the Italians fight for Italy and Jews fight for Israel and Palestinians fight for Palestine. I love that. Black people are fighting for our sovereignty in the same way. And reparations is a major part of supporting our fight for our sovereignty and rediscovering our knowledge of self. Because, you know, it was mentioned, it's slavery, yes. It's Jim Crow, yes. It's redlining, yes. But it's also the continued colonization of our people that manifests itself in our education system.
Talk about it.
Our education system have trained us to love and worship our oppressor and our slave master, and to do everything we can to work within its structure and its systems to uphold our continued oppression. So the process of reparations is calling all that out.
Yes,
and
indeed.
speaking
Call it
truth
out.
to power on that issue.
Yes.
And the last thing I'll say is this: trauma lives in the black body. Research has shown this.
Yes.
From generation to generation, trauma lives in the body. It lives in the blood vessels. It lives in the DNA and the cells and the mind. So when we talk about the disproportionate impact of heart disease, high blood pressure, diabetes,
Come on, Jamal.
stress, when we talk about that, it's directly connected to our historical oppression in this country.
Yeah.
So let's stop lying. Let's tell the truth.
That's right.
And I'm just so thankful, Cori, for you, for speaking out and leading and telling the truth. That's all we asking. Tell the truth. If America claims it's a country for everyone, and is promised to be a country for everyone, let it be a country for everyone. We ain't never get our 40 acres in the middle.
Nope.
That was given to white people, foreign and native born, as part of the homestead. And since then, we've been playing catch up. So, reparations now, reparations forever. And the last thing I'll say is this: we gotta vote the right damn people in the office so that we can pass this resolution and then pass legislation.
Amen.
So in 2024, let's vote the right people in, vote the wrong people out, so that we can get this done. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here. I want to read really briefly a message, remarks from Representative Sheila Jackson Lee. She wanted to make sure that that she was heard, that she was trying to get here, but it's not going to work. She has an event at the White House. So this is her words, Sheila Jackson Lee. I am pleased today to give recognition to Congresswoman Bush in the introduction of her resolution, recognizing that the United States has a moral and legal obligation to provide reparations for the enslavement of Africans and its lasting harm on the lives of millions of Black people in the United States. As I continue to fight for the official establishment of a commission and the passage of H.R. 40, a bill that leaders across America are still fighting for, I support this effort as a thoughtful contribution to the foundation of the decades of work we have done in Congress to move the needle forward. In particular, this resolution calls out our government's failure to pass H.R. 40 legislation, which I introduced this session, and a measure that has now been introduced in Congress for over 30 years, seeking the establishment of a commission to study and develop reparation proposals for African Americans. H.R. 40 is the pathway for a governmental framework that will help restore national balance and unity in terms of wealth, healthcare, education, housing, and the criminal justice system. By passing H.R. 40, Congress can start a movement toward the national reckoning we need to bridge racial divides. Reparations are ultimately about respect, reconciliation, and healing, and the hope that one day Americans of all backgrounds can walk together toward a more just future. Congress can start a movement toward the national reckoning. We need to build a bridge racial divides. Reparations are ultimately about respect, reconciliation, and healing, and the hope that one day Americans of all backgrounds can walk together toward a more just future. All efforts to work toward the implementation of H.R. 40 are welcome, and so I look forward to working with Congresswoman Bush. Thank you, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson.
Yes. All right.
Unity. Okay, next we'll call up DC Councilman Kenya McDuffie.
Yeah.
Yes. DC.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Man, I am delighted to be out here on this beautiful day to stand beside Congresswoman Cori Bush. You have, in no time, put in the work and amplify the voices of people who felt like they have not had the representation inside this building. You have been a fighter to make this country more racially equitable.
All right. Here we go.
Imagine growing up right here in the nation's capital.
Come on.
Not too far from here, less than a mile from here, as a matter of fact, on North Capitol Street. With the eyesight of the United States Capitol. Every time you wake up and you leave out your front door, you see that bastion of democracy. Then imagine, as you get older and learn the true history, that your grandparents bought that house in 1952, and that it has a racially restrictive covenant.
Whoa.
Imagine learning that your ancestors actually helped to build that building,
Tell it. My goodness.
but were never compensated for their work. This is what the next chapter looks like, Congresswoman.
Yes.
This is what the next chapter looks like. And for those who think it shouldn't happen, guess again. Even though slavery, Jim Crow was all these years ago, generations, the scars still remain.
Yes.
Because some people are living with that trauma still today, trapped in a cycle of perpetual poverty. And then there are others who are living with generations of accumulated wealth. Right here in your nation's capital, right here in the nation's capital, the separation, the disparity that exists between white wealth and black wealth is huge, it's gaping.
Talk about it.
The median white wealth here in this capital city is 81 times for white residents than it is for black residents. 81 times. $285,000 median net wealth for white folks, and approximately $3,500 for black folks. That's what this is about. Reparations is about restoring the harm that's been done and the collateral consequences that remain. It's about helping to heal those scars, because the scars still exist. And in DC, I've introduced a bill on reparations to establish a task force and establish a foundation fund to make sure we are moving things forward. Like Congresswoman Bush and all of those before her, I picked up the baton that our ancestors have handed to us. And it's a baton of freedom, a baton of justice and equality. It's a baton of accountability.
That's right.
Because the only way you heal those scars and create a level of economic opportunity and security for people who've been discriminated against throughout our history is that government plays a role. Similar to the role that they played in establishing the system of racism.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
And we're going to do it right here at the District of Columbia.
Yes.
We're going to get it done, because guess what? There is precedent.
Yes.
On April 16th, 1862,
Yeah. DC compensated.
Names and dates. Names and dates.
Gave
when
it
this
to white
government
folks.
emancipated the black slaves
That's right.
in this nation's capital, guess what? They provided compensation.
They did.
Not to us.
They provided compensation, all right, slavery. They provided compensation to the slave owners.
Yep.
So let's keep this fight going.
Teaching.
Not just in yesterday, but today and tomorrow. We got to repair the harm, enact reparations, and enact it now. Reparations win?
Now!
Reparations win?
Now!
Reparations win?
Now!
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, all right.
Next we'll call up Pastor Tracy Black.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm a preacher, so I have to keep my notes close to stay on task. The transatlantic slave trade is one of the greatest horrors recorded in the history of this world. And yet there has been no substantive atonement rendered to the victims or their progeny as compensation for over 200 years of free labor forcibly extracted from African descendant people in this country. There has been no adjudication of these crimes against humanity that were legitimized by those elected and sworn to uphold democracy then, or by their successors who occupy those very seats of power now. As a matter of fact, instead of seeking to atone for such atrocities, efforts are actively underway to abolish the truths of our nation's past.
That's right.
In order to abdicate our responsibility to make right our wrongs and to assuage ourselves of the guilt for not doing so. This is why, as a denominational officer of the United Church of Christ, a resident of the state of Missouri, a proud supporter of our Congressman Cori Bush, who did not come to D.C. to talk about it, but to be about it, who came to D.C. never forgetting the people who sent her or the purpose for which she acts. I am honored to support this bill of reparations for centuries. Restitution is a costly process. Inferior education, poor housing, unemployment, inadequate health care, each will require billions to correct, King warned. Justice, so long deferred, has accumulated interest, and its cost for this society will be substantial in financial as well as human terms. I close with this, my friends. America owes generations of African descended people in this country more than a financial debt.
Yes. Yes.
America owes us its dream.
That's right.
Because we are the ones who made it possible.
Yeah.
That's right. All right.
Good morning. I am Reverend Cassandra Gould, who hails from the Black Belt of Alabama, where history records that cotton and tobacco were king. But I want to set the record straight. My ancestors, those who raised and picked the cotton and the tobacco and the sugar cane,
All right now.
they were king and queen of America's economy.
That's
Yes.
right.
I spent most of my life in the great state of Missouri, in the city of St. Louis. And today I am proud to stand with my sister, Reverend Representative Cori Bush, who always rises for St. Louis, but today, on this historic day, she rises for the 40+ million descendants of those whose hope was plundered, for those whose names were erased not just from history, but even from their memories. I'm proud to stand here today to remind us that reparations, the reparatory acknowledging that harm, historic, systemic, perpetual harm has been, is, and will continue if we do not disrupt the normalization of the plunder of black lives that turn too quickly into black bodies, the plunder of livelihood in this country, where people of a different hue than mine always got privilege and continue to get privilege. We got plunder, economic plunder, health plunder, social plunder, educational plunder. We talk about the extraction of wealth. You got to have some wealth before it's extracted. We can't even get regular living wages. I stand here in this place 403 years after a ship called White Lion brought my black ancestors onto the soil that would become the United States. They didn't think we were human enough to even count all of us. The manifesto says 20-some odd lot of Negroes. I stand here 166 years after Dred Scott stood in the city of St. Louis having his humanity denied. 158 years after my grandma, great-grandma Joanna in Demopolis, Alabama, born into enslavement, finally got free. 54 years after Jim Foreman took the black manifesto to the white churches and synagogues so that the church might lead the way. 34 years after the late Representative John Conyers initially introduced a bill on reparations, and countless sessions after Representative Sheila Lee Jackson and Representative Barbara Lee have tried to get us what we deserve. Dr. King said in this city, 60 years ago, in this unfolding conundrum of life and history, there is such a thing as being too late. There is no time for apathy or complacency. This is time for vigorous and positive action. This bill, reparation now, is a form of action in a place where they legislated against our humanity. It is the least. It is the least. It is the beginning. It is a necessary tool for black folk to have a reversal of the plunder that we did not deserve, that we did not ask for, in a place that we didn't even ask to come. But here we are. We built it anyway, and we are still here. Reparations now, because in the words of the psalmist, how long? It's already been too long. Too long. Too long. I want to call up Cliff Chambers.
Hello everyone, Clifford Chambers III, artist and first-year student at Yale Divinity School. I want to thank Congresswoman Bush for having me here today. Quilts have had a long, storied, and beautiful history with Black Americans, the Black community. More specifically within slavery, quilts were used along the Underground Railroads to communicate messages to the enslaved on how to navigate this country, how to navigate the railroad, how to navigate themselves out of slavery into freedom. And so today behind me, we have a quilt that I made with the North Star pattern, the North Star representing Canada, representing freedom, representing a different America, a different life for Black Americans. And so on the quilt today, we have Reparations Realized. And it's a part of a larger effort with Trinity, where I'm the founder and head artist. And we're starting the Reparations Quilt Project. And today is one of the official launches that we're doing, where we're gonna create an entire quilt that will cover the National Mall. Where we will solicit quilts from America, from all over the world, and we will piece them together. We will use art as an advocacy piece. See, art within the Black community has always been intertwined with advocacy, with making a new way, with expressing how we feel, expressing the state of things. And right now we are attempting to do that on a large scale on the National Mall. And so I want to invite all of the quilters out there in America, all the quilting guilds, all of the artists, to visit trinitycreations.art/reparations or trinitycreations.art, A-R-T. And you'll see a reparations tab where you can sign up, submit your name, email address, and information. You can mail us a quilt, any size, any meaning that it has to you, to your family, to how what reparations would mean to your family, how your family has been robbed by the government or by private institutions. We want to hear your story, but we want it in a quilt. So again, trinitycreations.art. We hope that you submit, tell anybody that you know, spread the word, because we're going to use art as an advocacy tool to build this out and allow our art to support the reparations resolution, HR 40, and to bring a different impulse, to bring a different passion, and to bring a different impact to this movement. Thank you. Next we'll have Akeme Kochiyama.
Morning. My name is Akeme Kochiyama. I am so excited to be here today as the grandchild of Japanese American citizens who were incarcerated and economically disenfranchised under Executive Order 9066 during World War II, and who later became deeply involved in movements for civil and human rights, and who worked in solidarity with many organizations and communities fighting for reparations and social justice for Black people. I know that this day is long overdue. Right. Historically, the United States is a political economy of racism built on the backs of free Black labor. The impacts and vestiges of slavery and institutionalized racism continue to impact the descendants of Black slaves through the prison industrial complex, policing and housing practices, and the daily violence of economic and political disenfranchisement. And yet the United States has never formally acknowledged or made repairs for this. Reparations are long overdue. It is deeply meaningful to me to be here today during this week to witness and take part in this exciting announcement and to express my wholehearted support for all the harms arising from the sanctioned kidnapping and trafficking of human beings under chattel slavery and other forms of state-sanctioned violence. I want to thank and congratulate Representative Cori Bush, the HR 40 coalitions of hundreds of organizations, and all the people who have collaborated to move this resolution forward over the course of many, many years. As an activist whose work is centered in building community and solidarity, it has been extremely inspiring, uplifting, and empowering to see and take part in the organization and mobilization of the broader Japanese American community in support of HR 40. This work required organization, community engagement, and a lot of education. This experience and the result demonstrates what can be achieved when we take the time and care to learn about each other's histories and understand where our experiences intersect and overlap. This week is also significant to me and important to me because this Friday, May 19th, is the shared birthday of two activists, Malcolm X and my grandmother, Yuri Kochiyama.
Yes, Yuri Kochiyama!
Who worked together in solidarity towards social justice. My grandma would always say that it was Malcolm who taught her how important it is to know your own history and the history of others. In honor of their work together, I'd like to close with a short quote from my grandma. It goes, unless we know ourselves and our history and other people and their history, there is no real way that we can really have any positive kind of interaction and where there is real understanding. Thank you.
Thank you.
Reparations now.
Reparations now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Congresswoman Bush, for this transformative legislation. My name is Eric Miller, and I'm one of the attorneys, along with my colleague Mackenzie Haynes, representing the last 3 living survivors of the Tulsa Race Massacre. Reparations is not just about the past, but about the present. It's about who we are now and how we got to be here. From the beginning, black people in the United States have been singled out as a group for practices of violence, displacement, family separation, incarceration, and economic exploitation that have robbed us of our dignity and equal citizenship. The present dehumanization of black people in the United States is the result of these practices of power, created, entrenched, and maintained over not just decades, but centuries. We are witnessing right now in communities around the country people invoking these historically persistent practices of silencing and domination in classrooms, around water coolers, on Zoom meetings, in Bible study, at school board meetings, on legislative committees, and in judges' chambers. Friends, colleagues, congregants, board members, police, and politicians make histrionic appeals to an imagined American past aimed at dismissing and excluding black people from equal social, political, and economic participation in the American society. Again and again, black people in the United States are told that we should move on, that now is not the right time or the right venue to seek justice or tell our stories, that dignity and equality for black people is too disturbing or too expensive to bear. Congresswoman Bush's reparations bill rejects this national gaslighting of black communities who are blamed as the agents of their own oppression. Congresswoman Bush's reparations resolution says this is the time and this is the place for survivors of atrocities and serious human rights violations like the Tulsa Race Massacre of 1921 and their descendants to seek restitution, compensation, rehabilitation, satisfaction, and guarantees of non-repetition for past and ongoing harms. The Oklahoma State Legislature acknowledged that this murderous massacre was followed by a 75-year-long conspiracy of silence that perpetuated the domination of one race by another. But Oklahoma's done nothing to repair these harms. With this bill, now we can change that. Here and now, we come together to support Congresswoman Bush's bill to reject the practices of historical silencing, of racial power and oppression, and to begin the process of transforming our local, state, and national communities so that they are truly founded on justice for all.
That's right. That's right.
It is truly an honor to be with you today, Congresswoman Bush. I'm here with the law firm of Schulte, Roth, and Zabel. We put in the pro bono work to make Tulsa a better place, and we're doing it by representing the last 3 living survivors of the race massacre. But we got to keep talking about Tulsa.
Yes.
It's not done yet.
Right.
On May 30th, 1921, there was a hospital in Tulsa. There were doctors, lawyers, teachers, professionals going about their day, living their lives, living this American dream that they tell us we have to do, to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, they said. And in Tulsa, in Greenwood, we did. And then they were bombed.
Tell it.
There were no bootstraps left because they were bombed.
Right.
And they are still not repaired today. Tulsa still lives in economic disparity unlike any other place in America. And all of it can be traced back to the Tulsa Race Massacre of 1921. All of it. Because we were doing it. We were doing the work. We were working like they tell us to, and yet they don't let us live our lives and do what we can do to make our lives better. So we are here working hard in the court system, in the United States justice system, to make it better. But we have impediments. Judge Wall in Tulsa County Court, she has the opportunity to let us proceed. We are right on the law. We are right on the law. She let us proceed, but then the gaslighting of the American justice system is holding us back yet again, and we will not let it happen. So please, I ask all of you out here today, watching, listening, please advocate for Tulsa.
That's
Yes.
right.
We're not done yet, and we will continue to fight. Thank you so much. Next, we'll call up Reese and Heath.
Come on, Tracy.
I'm so grateful to Congresswoman Bush for your visionary and courageous leadership, knowing that the ancestors are smiling down on us today. Congresswoman Bush's historic Reparations Now resolution will provide a comprehensive framework for reparations that has never been entered into the congressional record before today. In a healthy democracy, we repair harms. In a healthy democracy, we embrace accountability.
Yes.
In a healthy democracy, we do not dehumanize any of our people. Currently, we are not living in a healthy democracy. Through various forms of economic and psychological exploitation, this government has forced compounding injuries upon my people of African descent. As we speak, our oppressors are rewriting our history, our lived experiences again and again. But today we say no more.
No more.
Our collective memory is power, and through this power we can fuel our demands for rightful repair. When we mobilized by the masses in defense of Black lives, we shouted, "We can't breathe." And what did the federal government say? Just wait. We shouted, "Stop killing us" in the streets. And what did the federal government say? Just wait. We can't wait when Black communities experience an excess of 1.6 million deaths compared with white populations during the past 2 decades. We can't wait when in the last 2 decades, Black youth aged 10 to 19 have experienced the greatest increasing percentage of suicides.
Before I begin, I would like to note that I speak on behalf of myself and Hoya's Advocating for Slavery Accountability and Down University. And in my time at Georgetown, I have thought a lot about what reparations should look like and who owes reparations. And I've realized that Georgetown University would not exist without the exploitation and enslavement of people who look like me. And the same goes for the United States of America.
Yes.
This country could not exist as it does without the enslavement and exploitation of people who look like me. And yet, throughout history, the federal government in this Capitol building right here have continued to pass discriminatory and oppressive policies time and time again. And I say no more.
No more.
And as a student, and as a soon-to-be 21-year-old, I think quite a lot about the future. And an America built on white supremacy, an America which refuses to take accountability for its harms, is not the America of liberty and justice for all that I was sold in elementary school.
That's right.
For today, this resolution is a meaningful step towards that America, the America that I want to live in, I want to work in, I want to raise my children in, but only for reparations now. And it is my pleasure to introduce my colleague, Ollie Henry.
Great work.
I'm truly blown away by the community that has shown up today. It has been beyond inspiring to see the ways that everyone here has come together for the same purpose, reparations now.
Reparations now.
Great.
I'm Ollie Henry, a rising senior at Georgetown University, working with Hoya's Advocating for Slavery Accountability. And we, our organization, stand in support of Cori Bush's, the amazing Congresswoman, Cori Bush's bill, because it's a necessary step towards reparative justice. Reparative justice requires a commitment to change our relationships to our institutions, to each other, and even to ourselves and our futures. At Georgetown, that work of changing relationships has been the backbone to our work. When we think of honoring lost legacies, it's about more than changing a building name. It's a commitment to honoring our ancestors whose stories were stripped from the history books.
That's right.
Our predecessors at the university have been pushing the seal, creating a foundation of resistance and resilience for our organizing to step into. This commitment to change extends beyond ourselves and into the future. It imagines a new future where we take meaningful action to honor erased legacies, to return property back to those who poured their blood, sweat, and tears into the land, to offer free trauma-informed care, and to abolish the police. Just like with this bill, our organizing builds on our ancestors' work to do the revolution dream. And we continue to push that seal farther and farther each day towards our collective liberation. Thank you.
Great job.
And I would now like to introduce Richard Brookshire.
Hello everybody, my name is Richard Brookshire. I'm the co-founder of the Black Veterans Project. I done cut my speech in half just to spare your feet, but I'm gonna speak some truth to power today. My brothers and sisters, there is a debt to be paid, a monetary, social, moral, and spiritual debt to be accounted for. In the words of the great Dr. King, we refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. There is a concerted and insidious effort in our country and within the hallowed halls of Congress to proffer a revisionist history of the bigotry and economic atrocities visited on millions of Black families since our nation's inception. But bigotry has left in its wake a trail of evidence so profound that it cannot be denied, and it will not be denied. I come before you today as one veteran, yet I stand on the shoulders of millions across the centuries whose honorable service was met with discrimination. Black veterans who face systematic denial of the rights and benefits afforded to their white compatriots. The right to equal opportunity in the armed forces, the rights to fair housing through VA home loans, to equitable education through the GI Bill, to vital pensions in old age, and to fair and just disability compensation for bearing the wounds of our nation's wars. Confronting this legacy is the work of the Black Veterans Project. To redress the multi-generational economic lynchings made plain for all to see. Because let me be clear, a nation built on chattel slavery, sustained through economic degradation, and bent on historical erasure without any semblance of accountability and reconciliation will face an onerous and indefensible future. That's right. Thank you.
Thank you for that. We have one more speaker, and then we'll open for questions. Victoria Kirby.
Yeah!
All right, I guess I'm bringing the benediction today. I got a little bit of call and response for y'all, so I hope you'll join me, all right? My name is Victoria Kirby York. I'm the Director of Public Policy and Programs at the National Black Justice Coalition, the premier organization fighting for Black LGBTQ+ and same-gender loving people across this nation. Now, I see a lot of you reporters out there. The United States Congress, the President of the United States, and the mainstream media have been consumed with how quickly the United States can pay its debts to foreign nations. We've been obsessing over our credit limit. However, there are debts here at home the United States defaulted on before and after its founding. The debt owed to descendants of enslaved Africans surpassed our debt ceiling generations ago. The debt the United States government owes to Black Americans is past due.
Past due.
When a bill has not been paid for too long,
All right now.
it goes to collection.
That's right. That's right. Okay.
It's time to collect. Now this is where the call and response comes in. So when I give a look back over my shoulder, I need for you all to say, it is time for us to collect what is owed. One quick practice. It is time for us to collect what is owed. All right. It is time for us to collect what is owed. Due to the wages stolen from generations of our ancestors through the Trans-Pacific slave trade, which we don't talk about that often, that happened a whole century, a whole 100 years before the transatlantic slave trade. Over half a millennium ago. We're talking about 500 years.
Come on now.
what is owed
to us for the multi-generational trauma that continues today, reflected in Black children being torn from their mother's arms by traitors of enslaved people and prejudiced child welfare agents today.
It is time
for us to collect what is owed.
For the promise of entrepreneurship to our African forebears that became English indentured servants and later racialized enslavement to keep us from organizing with poor white, indigenous, and Asian communities throughout the original primarily English-speaking colonies.
It is time for us to collect what is owed.
For the land and wealth routinely stolen from free Black families who poured everything they had into attempting to build a legacy their descendants could find pride in.
It is time for us to collect what is owed.
Now, when that didn't work, they destroyed the land. Shout out to what was just shared about Tulsa, to prevent wealth accumulation.
It is time for us to collect what is owed.
For acts of domestic terrorism like Tulsa and Rosewood and those that never made it into the media, and the destruction of Black-owned farmland to create the Tennessee Valley Authority, which ripped land and wealth from my grandmother, whose birthday is today. She turned 83. And her siblings. She watched as everything her father built and poured into his North Alabama and Tennessee farms were completely destroyed. And he was moved from owning land and building prosperity for Black farmers to living into a very small apartment with his 4 children.
It is time for us to collect what is owed.
For the hundreds of thousands of Black LGBTQ+ and same-gender loving people and others piled up in hospitals and unmarked graves across the country due to the HIV/AIDS epidemic because the government chose not to act.
It is time for us to collect what is owed.
Y'all really good. Thank you. For the too many to count federal policies, such as FDR's New Deal and others that excluded our loved ones from the nation's safety net until we forced them to include us all. Segregated communities were institutionalized by the federal government as a part of the New Deal through the establishment of the Federal Housing Administration's mortgage policies. These policies restricted Black families' access to capital while increasing that of white families. Separately, the New Deal Social Security program, which some people try to cut today, but I won't go there, initially excluded a majority of African American workers who were part of the agricultural and domestic employment sectors.
It is time for us to collect what is owed.
For being paid less than white people to fight in the same wars in similar roles, and until recently, if you were LGBTQ+ on top of it, you lost your job and benefits when people found out. Now, let me add a little something to that. The U.S. government, thankfully and for good reason, is retroactively connecting Don't Ask, Don't Tell discharged service members with their benefits and updating records to show honorable discharge. Our government is also ensuring spousal benefits for those, as they should, for those unable to get married as a result of the Defense of Marriage Act. Now, as an organization that caters to Black LGBTQ+ people, if the queer community I'm a part of can get reparations from our government doing wrong to us, certainly the Black community I was born into and raised in should be able to as well.
It is time for us to collect what is owed.
To us by a government whose buildings we built, who stole money and land from us, and whose economic system exists because of our stolen and discounted by racism labor. The United States government stole our property and profit from our labor to become the wealthiest nation in the world. And there are a lot of nations we can pick with.
It is time for us to collect what is owed.
To our families, so we no longer have a wealth disparity that is essentially a function of theft and intentional inequitable treatment by those we consent to govern us. Finally, while reparations are critical, Our nation desperately needs access to our nation's complete and uncensored history to heal the divides that stoke fear, bias, and resentment. That's why the National Black Justice Coalition is proud to endorse Representative Bush's Reparations Now resolution, HR 40, and legislation calling for the establishment of the first United States Commission on Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation. You can learn more about our reparations policy recommendations by visiting www.mbjc.org. And for one last time, let's hear it. It is time to collect what is owed. Thank you. And now back to Representative Cori Bush.
I know that we have spent the time quite a bit. I have one more member of Congress walking over, so we're going to give her an opportunity. But I want, okay, all right. I want to also shout out a couple of folks that didn't get to the mic. The Reverend Jesse Jackson sent a representative from Rainbow Push. I'm not sure if he's still here. Oh, there he is. Okay. So we want to acknowledge Reverend Jackson and Rainbow Push for being here and being in support. Also, David Ragland from the Truth Telling Project, which is an organization that I helped co-found with Dr. Ragland, and all the work that the organization is doing on reparations. Now we will call up our newest Congresswoman, who has been doing such an incredible job.
Walking past and I saw my people out here. So I'm happy to be here today because wherever we're gathered, we know that we have an obligation to continue to fight for those things that our community deserves. And I'm so grateful for my sister Cori Bush's leadership around this. Reparations for descendants of slaves in this country is common sense. We recognize the economic harms, the social harms that have been done to our communities, and we recognize the ways in which those harms have not just held us back in the past, but are still holding us back, still holding us right now in the future. So as this legislative body that has played a role in those harms, we now have that obligation to repair those harms. That's right. It's a simple tenet that we recognize for anybody else and across any other legal principle. But Black people in this country have yet to have that same sort of reparation. So I'm here today to add my voice to this movement, to add my platform, to add my fight to this with so many folks who have come before us in hopes that this is the last generation of folks who are continuing to fight for that. I have no doubt that the list of harms and the list of solutions have been enumerated here today. So I just wanted to come to thank you all so much for standing. Thank you so much for having us, and we will continue to stand with you and the fight.
Would you say your name and where you're from?
Morgan Phillips with Daily Mail. Can you talk a little bit about what this reparations plan would look like? Is there a per person dollar amount you would like to see? Anything like that?
Yeah. So what we're working on is we're looking at the black-white wealth gap, and which is about $14 trillion. So there, we have scholars like Dr. Sandy Darity and Jason Hinkle and others who have been working on a dollar amount, looking at what that is. And so what we say is that dollar amount, that is something that we know of, that is at least the black-white wealth gap. And I said before, that is unjust. That is based upon race, based upon the fact that we were kidnapped and brought to this country and made to work and enslaved. So if we look at that, we are saying at least that. But this is not just about money. This is also about how we the changes, the transformative changes in housing, in healthcare, in education, in our economically as well as in our environment. And let me add to that, we're talking about over 222 million hours of forced labor. 222 colleagues say, well, we didn't enslave, and you were never a slave. But this is the thing, especially for our law and order folks. If someone is killed and they are no longer here, does the person who did the killing are they not held accountable? Because in this society, what I know of is the push is that folks be held accountable. That's right. Law and order here. If somebody is no longer here, does that not mean that they should get that accountability or what others call justice? In the same way, our ancestors may not be here, but we are their descendants, and we deserve to have the compensation, the restitution, the rehabilitation for everything that they lost, for everything that they gave, for everything that they suffered, for everything, for every lie, for every single thing that happened to them, because we're talking about stolen people, stolen from their land, lost their culture, their religion, their tradition, and brought into a country where even yet today in 2023, we still aren't free.
Amen.
Reparations now!
Reparations now!
Reparations now!
Reparations now!
Reparations now!
Reparations now!
Right, I should.
All right.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
And if I forgot the organization that did
We have pioneers in the movement here as well. Nikichi Taifa, Reverend Thompson, Dr. Ray Wimbush, Justin Hansford, and others. So I just wanted to make sure we acknowledge them.
Yes, thank you all. I can't thank you enough. And I can say one thing I don't know if everybody knows. Can I say? I just want to say. Can I say?
Need to know.
So I just want to say that we appreciate the iconic NBA player LeBron James for his work to help push this message forward, the message of reparations, by working on the documentary, and that's the cameras that you all see. So they're working on the documentary, and this will help to push all of the things that we are working on. So all of you are a part now with that.
All right, Madam Representative, one of our reparations legacy organizations here in Cobra.
Yes.
Kenneth Henry, the legislative director,
Thank you for being here.
who whipped the 215 votes we had for HR 40 before our friends pulled the rug out from under us. Amen.
Thank you so much.
I stand with you. Tell me what you want me to do.
Hey,
Push the button and I'm
yes,
ready.
that's right.
215
Oh, and if anybody wants to come, our office door is open. If anybody wants to come, I think we have a little something to nibble on, and you can come and let's just fellowship with one another. Unless folks gotta go, but for those that don't have to go, you're welcome to come to our office. All right. I just want to share this thing. Yes. Oh, oh, President Sojourner. Thank you for being here. Thank you. Oh gosh, if I had a list, I would have called you all out on the microphone.
Congressman Jared Smith from Network Lobby.
I'm sorry, yeah, that's right. Forgot Jared.
Yeah, I want to get your phone number, man, before
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
Text me.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, all right.
Hey, sorry, I didn't get it right. Okay. We'll put out a note. We'll put out something.
Great.
Okay.
I'm gonna call you out of here. Oh, this guy, man. Hey, that's good, man. Yeah, that's just what you got here on this. You know, I snuck in.